Hi everyone, it's Taheerah, and today I'm bringing you this nativity card. It's a really nice gold, blue and white colour scheme featuring blending of distress inks and also some heat embossing, so let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is create my card base. I'm using some cream shimmer cardstock from Paper Tray Ink, and I'm just trimming this in my paper trimmer now to be a 3 3/4 square card. So that will be the first cut at 3 3/4, then just unfolding my paper trimmer and measuring up to the 7.5 inch mark and trimming that cardstock there. I'm also going to be using a separate panel of cardstock at 3.5 inch square to do my blending and my distress ink. Before I do that though, just going to fold my card base. So I'm measuring at 3 3/4 and just scoring a few times on the cardstock and then flipping it round, scoring again. And the way I make sure my card base is nicely folded is I push the edge against the edge of my score buddy and just fold the crease in and crease it like so. Moving on to my card panel now, this is another piece of cream shimmer cardstock, and I'm going to be doing some blending of distress inks. I'm using Stormy Sky, Faded Jeans, Chipped Sapphire, and a bit of Black Soot as well. So I'm just taking my mini ink blending tool with mini foam. I just recently got these and I really love them. So much more control of where the ink goes, and also so much easier to control the amount of pressure that you use on the cardstock itself. So I'm using Stormy Sky first of all, and I'm trying to create a bit of a halo effect with the inks. I'm moving on to Faded Jeans next. Because this cardstock is a shimmer cardstock, it has a coating on the surface of the paper, so that means that the ink actually sits on the surface a bit more rather than blending in to the cardstock itself. So this is quite useful for some blending techniques, but it also means that the ink will sit on the surface and it will actually come off onto your fingertips quite easily as well. So I'm actually going to have to go over some of the areas again and again once I've coated my cardstock. So adding a bit more of the Faded Jeans and then just moving back in with the Stormy Sky for the centre. And then I'm ready to move on to my next colour. I'm going to be using Chipped Sapphire next. I'm using a different foam for each one of the colours. This means that I'll keep the colours true on the foams and I'll be able to blend the colours without worrying about contaminating them. So I'm moving on to Chipped Sapphire and just adding a bit more colour here and just adding a bit more depth to the colour as well, right up to the top. The final colour I'm going to be using is Black Soot, and I want to use this colour sparingly because it's quite a strong colour. So to prevent me having to use a lot of it, I'm just going to be adding a lot more depth to that Chipped Sapphire colour so that I have a strong colour up the top and I only need to use a little bit of Black Soot right at the top there. So I'm still using Chipped Sapphire at the moment. I'm just also tidying up some of the areas where my fingers have been and taken the ink off with them. And here you'll see me moving on to the Black Soot ink and just adding a new foam and just going to be adding a little bit of ink right at the top to add some depth. Now I'm using quite a light hand when I'm actually blending these inks in, so at first I'm not getting the strength of the colour that I want, so I'm actually having to go back to the corners and just keep adding some more of that Black Soot ink until I get a darker sky. You can see me starting to use a bit more pressure and a bit more force here. Just tidying up a bit of the ink at the bottom as well. I think I'm done with my ink blending for now, and I'm going to be using a lot of splatter and mists on this cardstock. So the first thing I'm going to be using is some Perfect Pearl mist in pewter. I'm trying to give this an even coating all over the cardstock, but my nozzle was actually clogged, so I decided to switch tact part the way through and just actually splatter some of it on instead. Ended up with quite a lot of quite fat splatter, but sometimes this is just the way it goes. I gave up on actually using the mist to splatter all over, and I switched over to my water mixed with a little Perfect Pearl powder to just spritz all over. And now I'm getting a really nice blending of those inks. I'm moving on to a different Perfect Pearls mist now. This is in Perfect Pearl colour itself, and adding some more splatter. And finally adding some Heidi Swap Colour Shine mist in Gold Lame. This is probably my favourite gold mist at the moment. I have recently bought the Hero Arts Gold mist and I'm looking forward to trying that as well. I wanted to add some white stars also, or some white splatter, so I'm using some Mr. Huey's Calico White mist. I'm just going to be adding a little bit of this sparingly. At this point my cardstock is starting to warp quite significantly from all of that moisture, and that's why the top splatter actually sort of spilled like that. So I've decided to pull out my heat gun at this point and start drying the cardstock, take some of that moisture out. I did used to have one of those gun-shaped heat tools, but mine died a death quite some time ago. I invested in one of these hairdryer-shaped ones, and I really like it because it's quieter than my previous model. However, it does take a bit longer to heat up and be useful. I've heard a lot of people talk about the Milwaukee heat gun, and I might try that at some point, but for the moment I'm quite happy with this hairdryer one, even if it takes a bit more time. So you'll see me just giving the cardstock a good blast of heat to try and set some of that splatter and also just dry the cardstock off. I'm liking the look of that quite a bit, but I decided I want to add a bit more white splatter to it, so just taking out my calico white mist, adding another splat of that, and I decided I wanted a little bit more gold as well, so just adding a light splatter of the gold. I think that's about enough now. So I'm going back in with my heat gun and I'm just drying off that cardstock again. The next step I'm going to be doing is some stamping and some heat embossing, so I really want to make sure that that cardstock is really dry so that the embossing powder doesn't stick to any of the splatter or to any of the ink. Really liking the night sky look that I've achieved with this blending of the inks and the mist spatter as well. So I'm giving that a good dry. I think that's quite alright now, and I love the shimmer that I'm still getting from the cardstock also. I'm going to be using this gold embossing powder from Wow. It's actually gold sparkle embossing powder, and first of all I just want to make sure that none of that embossing powder is going to stick where it shouldn't. So I'm using my EK Success powder tool and just coating my cardstock good and proper with it. I'm going to be using this City of David stamp set by Gina K, and I'm using the nativity scene at the bottom there, and also just the star from the manger itself. So I'm taking my Versamark ink pad. I actually have a new one at the moment. It's nice and juicy and it's clean ink pad, which is a change for me. I'm just going to be stamping the nativity scene here. My cardstock was still slightly warped, so I actually didn't get this completely straight, but it's quite close, and I'll tidy that up later on. So I'm just giving a lot of pressure to my acrylic block there to make sure that the stamping is good. And as I mentioned before, I just want to stamp the star from the manger, so I've masked off the stamp with washi tape, and I'm inking up now with Versamark ink. I'll just remove all of this washi tape now, so that I only have the star to stamp. So taking the last of that washi tape off, and just positioning where I want the star to be, and stamping down now. As I remove this, you'll see what appears to be a bit of shadow from the manger. That's just where the stamp has taken off some of the powder, so it's not actually stamped any ink on there. I'm bringing in this embossing powder from Wow. It's gold sparkle embossing powder, and just the tip when you use this kind of embossing powder is to give it a shake first of all to make sure that the glitter and the embossing powder is nicely mixed. Otherwise you could end up with just a coating of glitter and it's not very even when you use it. So I'm just finishing coating off my cardstock here and just tipping the excess back into the jar. I actually forgot to have a spare sheet of paper with me when I recorded this video, so I didn't have anything to tip the powder onto and then tip that back into the jar. That is how I would normally do it. I'm not usually completely a cavalier when I create cards, I promise. So I'm bringing my heat gun back in, because I've just used this, it's actually still quite hot, so it didn't take too long to heat up. I've finished heat embossing that now, and I have the panel ready to go. I'm going to flip this over and adhere it to my card base with score tape. So I've added score tape to the back here. I think this is 1.5 inch, 1 inch and 1/2 inch. I'm just going to peel off the backing paper and adhere it to my cream shimmer card front, and my card is all done. I'm going to leave you with some stills of the card so that you can just see it in all its glory. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Please do visit my blog for more projects, more ideas and supplies for all of my videos. Thank you so much for joining me and have a great day. Bye!